Hi everyone, this is Michelle. Thank you for joining us today. I think many of you are familiar with the State of Higher Education webinars that we conduct, and we're excited to have over 200 of you join us in this call. I am president of the Campaign for College Opportunity, but as the first in my family to go to college and someone that has benefited from the opportunities that college provides, college graduate is still my favorite title. And that's a title that more and more students and their families want to earn. Just last week, the Public Policy Institute of California released a report on the workforce skills gap in our state and noted that we're on track to be 1.1 million college graduates short for the economic needs of the future. Today's economy is even more demanding of workers with more than a high school education, and college graduates continue to have better economic and employment prospects than their peers without a college degree. Quite frankly, a high school diploma is simply not enough to guarantee the many opportunities that most of us on this call have been fortunate to benefit from. Our workforce demands better workers. More Californians want and know they need to go to college to succeed, and the state benefits from increased tax revenues from higher earners, benefits from the innovation that our universities and its graduates produces, and the decreased cost in social services that could be real money saved if we improve the educational attainment of our residents. It's a win-win-win. So by many accounts, I should have the easiest job in the world. It's not hard to make the case for greater access and success in our colleges and universities. But alas, that's not true. And so in 2003, the Campaign for College Opportunity was founded. Concerned that our state leaders were simply not keeping up with the growing need to ensure a spot in college for our growing and diverse young adult population, and equally concerned that our colleges and universities needed to do more to better serve the students they have and get them to a certificate, get them to transfer, and to a degree. And a big challenge facing California today is our ability to ensure that college preparation, attendance, and success is happening for all of our students, especially our growing diverse population. Many of you are familiar with our series of reports on the state of higher education in California. Earlier this year, we released our research on the state of Latinos and the state of Blacks in higher education. Today, I'm glad that we can share with you a first-of-its-kind report on the state of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. I should share that I wasn't sure this report would be possible. You see, while in all our earlier reports we included data on aggregated Asian Pacific Islanders as one whole group, we knew and were frustrated by the reality that this aggregation failed to tell a complete story about the diversity within the API community. You see, at the campaign and personally, we care deeply about equity for all Californians, regardless of race and ethnicity, income status, gender, etc. We strongly believe and value equal opportunity, preparation, and success for all of our residents. And this report allows us to share with you a more complicated but honest picture about the successes and challenges within the Asian American community in our state. This report would not have been possible without the significant financial support of the Walter and Evelyn Haas Jr. Fund. When I lamented our challenges in providing better data for Asian Americans, the Haas Jr. Fund did not hesitate to help us make it happen. And we were incredibly glad that we could partner with Asian Americans Advancing Justice, who worked alongside us to inform and guide the report. Betty Hung, Joanna Lee, and Stuart Kuo, you have each been great to work with. I first met Stuart Kuo, president of Asian Americans Advancing Justice, when I was a college student and was fortunate enough to participate in the then jointly run MALDEF and APALC Leadership in Interethnic Relations program. So it's been an honor to work by his side on this effort and have him ensure that our research and context was well informed. I'm glad he's on this call to share his own thoughts with you. Stuart, welcome, and please share your own words of welcome to our group.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank the Campaign for College Opportunity for their leadership and partnership on this report, especially to Michelle Siquiros, as well as Audrey Dow and your researchers, Daniel Bird and Nadia Viliani. I know Michelle will be thanking the advisory committee members by name, but I really appreciate their invaluable insights and perspectives that helped to shape the report. Asian Americans Advancing Justice LA as Michelle said, we've been around for a while, since 1983. We're the nation's largest civil rights organization serving Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. For over a decade, we've worked with diverse students and parents. Actually, it's over 1,500 to 2,000 students and parents per year. And we've witnessed firsthand the challenges and barriers that diverse NHPI students face in applying to college and in trying to graduate from college. So I'm so glad that we could help on this report because it's based on disaggregated Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander ethnic data. And that makes a valuable contribution in challenging the great stereotypes and the many common misperceptions. And it allows us to paint a more accurate picture of the complexity of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities in higher education, including in admissions, in completion, and in financial needs. I think that the report, we'll talk about solutions later, but I really like the disaggregated data because it lays the groundwork for many of us who are concerned about this to continue to push for more disaggregated data. We'll talk about California in a moment, but there's going to be a new push by the Southeast Asia Resource Center, Action Center, as well as Empowering Pacific Islander Communities to make sure that there's a reintroduction of a disaggregated data bill that will help immensely in understanding the unique and diverse needs of our population. And secondly, I think the report lays groundwork for a sharpened role of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders to increase work in coalition to expand opportunities for all, especially our diverse underserved students. So again, thank you for the Campaign for College Opportunity to allow us to work with you, and for all those who have joined this call today.
Thank you, Stuart. So there are over 200 people that have RSVP'd for this call, and I'm really grateful that you're all joining us and that the interest in supporting progress towards greater equity in higher education for all students is so strong. Beginning last winter, as the U.S. Census released new data, our former research and policy analyst, Nadia Valiani, began working on this report. When she left our team, Dr. Daniel Bird, our Policy and Research Director, kept it moving forward without skipping a beat. I'm grateful for their dedication and professionalism in conducting research for the campaign, and if there's any questions that you have that stump me, know that I will very quickly defer them to Dr. Bird. These reports and the presentation we're going to share with you today are going to provide important data on the educational attainment, college enrollment and readiness, and college completion rates for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders in our state. We believe it's the first of its kind report that captures data from the U.S. Census, from the California Department of Ed, the California Community College System, the Cal State University System, and the University of California System. I think as many of you know, conducting good research is hard work, and for this report we secured the amazing participation of a research advisory group of experts that included Sefa Aina, Quen Din, Neil Harakoshi, Vincent Pan, Karthik Ramakrishnan, Judy Sakaki, Robert Teranishi, Diane Yamashiro Omi, and Geraldine Iparagire. Thank you so much for everything that you did for this report. I also really want to thank the California Department of Education, the California Community College Chancellor's Office, the Cal State University Chancellor's Office, and the University of California for providing the data, responding to questions, and offering their own feedback on the report. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions, you'll be able to type them directly onto your chat box on the left side of the screen. If you're on Twitter or Facebook, please feel free to share the report and use the hashtags CA Higher Ed, API. You can also follow, tweet, or retweet me at MS College Op or at our College Op handle in general. For many of you, you might be busily writing notes down. Please know that all the materials related to these reports, including this PowerPoint that you're viewing on our website, will be on our website at www.collegecampaign.org. So let's get started. Our report will share with you key findings on educational attainment, enrollment, college readiness, and college completion for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. As I shared earlier, this data is disaggregated where most educational data usually just simply combines Asian Pacific Islanders under one group. This report will prove why viewing this group as a monolithic whole is not good practice, especially given the diverse communities that experience a wide range of educational barriers and outcomes across California. We find that great diversity within these groups merits attention and action. This report is important because Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders make up 1 in 7 Californians. And when Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders go to college, they overwhelmingly attend our public colleges and universities. As you know, California's population is incredibly diverse. In fact, we are home to nearly 1/3 of the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander population in this country. In fact, more than 6.6 million Asian American Californians reside here. The largest Asian American groups in California include over 1.5 million Filipinos, just as many almost Chinese, significant numbers of Vietnamese, Indian, Korean, Japanese Californians as well. In this next slide, you can see the top 5 counties that are home to the biggest population of Asian Americans. In fact, LA County is home to 28% of our Asian American population. The next slide shows you the distribution of Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders across the state. Again, you can see a large number, 18%, reside in Los Angeles County. You can also see that Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders have experienced incredibly fast population growth, and this is expected to continue. In terms of educational attainment, there is some good news. Almost 1 out of every 2 Asian American adults in California holds a bachelor's degree or higher. But degree attainment varies widely in our state by race, and certainly within the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander community, as this slide demonstrates. So here you can see from a high of 70% of Indian adults who have a bachelor's degree, only 15% and 10% of Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, and Laotians do, respectively. Stuart, can you share some context for why there exist these wide differences?
Yes. I think it is very important to consider the context of this diverse range of ethnic groups. And in order to do that, we do have to look at their histories and migration patterns. And then we can better understand the communities and the educational barriers and opportunities. I would say in terms of this call, we can't look at each grouping, but we do need to look at the fact that while Native Hawaiians are an indigenous people, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have diverse histories. Some have been here for many generations, 5 or so generations. Others are more recent immigrants, and some are refugees. After years of restrictions on immigration from Asia to the United States, the Immigration and Nationality Act was passed in 1965. So we're celebrating the 50-year anniversary of that act, which really opened the door to immigration from Asia based on skills and family reunification. And many Southeast Asians, however, came to the United States as refugees, fleeing war and strife. On the other hand, Pacific Islanders hail from many different countries, some of which have political relationships with the U.S., and those relationships determine whether immigrants from Pacific Islands are considered citizens, nationals, immigrants, or migrants once they come to the United States. So I think it's very important to look at these different patterns because that gives us some context for the challenges students face. But all of these students in each of the ethnic communities finds a diversity in terms of income in their families, the first generation college students. So I think we really have to look at disaggregated data and histories to truly understand the particular needs of our communities.
Thanks, Stuart. And I think it's important to just share with everybody on this call, we're giving you a few highlights of what was an intense and rigorous 50-page report that you can find online. So to Stuart's point about the differences, we will be sharing some of the challenges and barriers that different communities face, but we really do recommend reading the full report to get a really good sense of all of these findings. So in our report, we also look at college enrollment, and here you can see the variety of enrollment patterns by race in California. So this is just, reaffirming the important role that public colleges and universities play for all Californians, but specifically for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders as well. If they go to college in California, 87% of Asian Americans go to a public institution. 73% of Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders do. Those rates are incredibly high, so it speaks to the important role that public policy and investment in our public colleges and universities plays. In this next slide, you can also see, some interesting differences as well. So Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders enroll at for-profit colleges in California at a rate higher than any other group, 19%. And there are some challenges in terms of for-profit college cost, as well as success rates that are important to analyze and look at and might be of concern. Again, I think it speaks to the value of disaggregated data because you can find some trends and patterns that allow us to push for the kind of policy interventions that might be necessary. In this next slide, you can see where students transfer from community college. So here you also see, again, that 22% of Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders transfer to a for-profit college. And in the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about college readiness. So that diversity across these ethnic groups continues to persist. High school graduation rates for Asian Americans and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders vary by 21 points, from a high of 96% for Japanese Californians to a low of 75% for Samoan Californians. This diversity is also present in A through G completion rates, which are the courses students must take in high school to be eligible to even apply to our UC or Cal State campuses. And there's also, again, huge variation from very high completion rates of A through G courses, 76% for Chinese Californians, to very low, 27% for Samoan Californians. And then we wanted to look as well at college readiness, and we see that there's huge differences here as well. And while there's a lot of data presented in this slide, I think what we want you to see is that only just under half of Asian Americans and 17% of Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders that are in the 11th grade were tested as ready for college English. And these rates were even lower for college math. So we wanted to look at remediation at community colleges. We looked at the percentage of first-time community college students that enter in the fall of 2013 and how many of them have taken pre-college level courses. This means they weren't ready for college level, so they were placed in those courses. And here in this graph, again, you can see, from a high of 65% of Cambodian Californians to a low but still important and significant high of 42% for Korean Californians. Over half of Asian Americans and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders across all these groups are enrolled in pre-college level courses. At the CSU, the Cal State University system, these trends also exist. And you can see again here that for the Hmongs, 73% of them require remediation when they enter the Cal State system, and that's the highest rate across any group. So being college ready or stuck in remediation courses matters, and the reason we highlight these statistics are because we care about student success when they get to college. And when we look at the level of completion, they're very much affected by whether students are in these pre-college or remedial courses. So with rates of completion significantly lower for community college students who end up in remedial courses, we know that this is an important issue to tackle. In your view, the lighter green color on your slide just shows the disparity and the lower rates of college completion for those students that have to take remedial courses. So now you will see completion rates for students at community colleges. These are 6-year completion rates, and here you can see, again, huge diversity in completion depending on the subgroup that we're analyzing. And this is the 4-year Cal State University completion rate. Again, low for all groups regardless of race and ethnicity, but you can see lower for Asian Americans and for Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. And this is the 6-year completion rates. Again, just over half for Asian Americans, only 41% for Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. And at the University of California, the 4-year completion rate, 63% for Asian Americans, just over 50% for Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. And the 6-year rate much higher, but yet, again, differences. So of course, I think as you see this data, all of us are trying to understand what are some of the reasons for the barriers that exist. And in our report, unlike other research that's been done, we find that poverty is obviously a key factor, and this too varies by group. So Stuart discussed the sort of historical context, the immigration laws in this nation, how many generations folks have been here versus more recent refugee status. You can see that this plays out, and here you can see the percent of youth living in poverty in California by ethnic groups. It varies widely, with a large percentage of the Hmong and Cambodian population living in poverty as opposed to some other groups. There are also some serious English language proficiency challenges facing this community. You can see that the rates of Asian Americans and Native Hawaiians that are limited in their English proficiency is incredibly high and higher than the rate for Latinos. Then we looked at whether a student is first in their family to go to college or not. A lot of research indicates that the biggest predictor of whether someone will go to college and graduate is whether or not their parents have gone to college, and we see that this too varies by group in both the CSU and the UC. In addition, we know from a recent study at the University of California that's estimated that 45%, almost half of the UC's undocumented students are Asian. An important factor as we figure out how to address and serve those students as well. why is this important? California, as you all know, is home to the largest number of undocumented immigrants in the country, and we really need to know where undocumented students are going to college, whether they're getting aid, what additional obstacles they have, how we can support them, and address sometimes the often misperception that all undocumented students or most are actually Latino. We know that that's definitely not true here. So thankfully, while many barriers and challenges exist and this diversity is critical to address, some colleges are already doing amazing work on this front. As we release this report, and again, we've only highlighted some of the data included in the report. There's very, much more detailed analysis around college preparation, enrollment patterns, and success patterns in each of the systems. We did want to highlight some best practices. And at Sacramento State University, they have a full circle program that is focused on improving graduation rates for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander students. And fortunately, we have Professor Tim Fong on the line, and he's going to tell us briefly about some of the work that Full Circle does.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Yes, Full Circle Project has been in existence since 2011 and received an Asian American, Native American, and Pacific Islander Serving Institution Grant, or NHPIs for short. We are one of just 21 campuses across the country that have received NHPIs funding. And we've done quite a great job with the work we've been doing and getting a lot of attention for the successes, which we're very proud of. In brief, Full Circle Project is comprehensive. It serves students throughout their entire college career. It starts off with a freshman seminar. We bring in a cohort of about 100 students and put them in what we call a learning community. So they're taking courses together and building a sense of community. One of the things I should mention is that the graduation and rates of API students was not very high at Sacramento State. And one of the reasons that we theorized was that there was a lack of community. Even though the population is large, it's very diverse, and we wanted to create basically an API or Pan-Asian, Pan-Pacific Islander community and family for our students. So it starts off with a freshman learning community, and again, beyond that, it continues throughout their academic career. We work with students to get them engaged with the university, in particular through our student organizations and leadership program, which is a certificate program that the more you accomplish, the more certificates you earn. And it's been very successful for our students to be engaged on campus, but also off campus. There are lots of studies that show the more engaged a student is with the campus and with the community, the better retention and graduation rates. So it's called Full Circle because the hope is that they start off as freshmen, they continue on as sophomores and juniors, and now our first cohort is seniors. But they also give back to the students who are coming after them. We have a mentor program that has some of the older FCP students, Full Circle students, helping to mentor the younger, more usually the sophomore students, and to continue that cycle around again. Our students also are involved in going to high schools and middle schools. We have an ambassador program, so the students can show their experience at Sacramento State. And again, the full circle comes around where some of the high school students are inspired to come to Sacramento State because of our program. I just have to say briefly that the research that we've done on our program is very successful. We have about 90% of our students who are low income. Over 60% are first generation. But our data shows that their retention rates, their GPAs, good standing rates are superior or higher than the university as a whole, and higher than other API students who are not in the Full Circle Project.
Thank you, Professor Fong. I think it sometimes can seem overwhelming when we look at a lot of data, but it's clear that Sac State and other campuses have figured out projects that can help improve graduation rates, and we want to make sure that those get the attention they deserve. Audrey Dow, who's our Vice President here at the Campaign for College Opportunity, is going to share another example of a best practice, De Anza College's Asian American Pacific Islander Initiative to maximize positive academic achievement and cultural thriving that goes by the shorter acronym of IMPACT. Audrey?
Thank you so much, Michelle. So we also wanted to take a look at community colleges that were doing a good job of working with their Asian American communities. And so we took a look at De Anza College, which is located in Santa Clara County, to see what some of the work that they were doing. At De Anza, 42% of their almost 35,000 student body identify as Asian American or Pacific Islander. And in 2008, a group of faculty and staff leaders decided to do some digging around how different communities under that umbrella were faring. And what they found was that Filipino students, Vietnamese students, Cambodian students, Hmong, and Pacific Islander students were really struggling with basic skills English and math. And I know we saw earlier a lot of the data on how students are faring, and that was indeed what De Anza College was observing, that there were very, very low rates of completion of the basic skills English and math patterns. So similar to what De Anza already had on campus, they had learning communities for Latino students and for Black students. They thought, why reinvent the wheel? Let's create a learning community for our Asian American Pacific Islanders students with a real focus on a support in basic skills, English and math. And so similar to the Sac State program, students are in a learning cohort together. Groups of students take courses together with a real emphasis on supporting students through the basic skills, remedial math and English pathways. What's really unique about the program is that the Impact API program has 3 dedicated counselors that only work with the students in this program, which is a tremendous benefit to the students going through this because they have the dedicated help consistently over time as they work through these important courses. Some of the success that De Anza College has had since 2008, they've increased the percentage of Filipino students who enrolled in pre-college level English who then succeeded in college level English from 34% to 61%. And for Filipinos and Pacific Islanders who were enrolled in pre-college level math, who then succeeded in college level math, from 35 to 33% for Filipinos and Pacific Islanders, all the way up to 44% and 41%. In terms of persistence, fall to winter, so our students moving from one semester to the next, we had Filipinos, Pacific Islanders, and Southeast Asians around persistent rates around the mid-70s, and those were moved to nearly 100%. So some tremendous work that's happening at De Anza College by just focusing attention and the supports students need to be successful.
Thank you, Audrey. And I think both Full Circle and Impact at De Anza College give us really good examples of practices that work. I think the challenge and what we need to press for is how to scale those practices so that students don't get lucky by falling into these programs, but that is their experience whenever they walk into a college campus life. So thanks for sharing those two, Professor Fong and Audrey. Addressing our challenges in higher education and ensuring better access and equity for all our students isn't just good for these students. As we've put out these reports focused on Latinos, focused on Blacks, focused on now Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, I always like to make the point that this is good policy. Good educational outcomes is good for California. And in fact, research has demonstrated that for every dollar the state invests and spends in higher education, there is a $4.50 return to the state. And that comes in the form of the more educated your populace, the better jobs they're able to get, which means they earn more money, pay more taxes, and require less social services. And these are important things to consider as we press for greater investments in higher education. These problems in terms of inequity in higher education are solvable. So what can you do? I hope you're already asking, and many of you on this call are already busy doing. But we know that you're interested in solutions, as are we. We do research because we want to make the case for the types of investments and policies that we think make sense for California, that are good for students, that promote equity, and that support our economic strength as a state. And the first big recommendation is that we need a bold state plan for higher education in California. We need to ensure that students and colleges in particular are able to support these students to move through pre-college level courses. We need to make sure that we advocate for clear pathways, make it clear how a student can get from point A to point B in terms of transfer or in terms of earning that certificate or a degree. We should be very clear about providing the kind of support and direction that our students need. We also know that we need to expand college knowledge as early as possible in middle and high school and support and invest in the types of student support services that help students succeed, like you heard Full Circle and Deanza describe. It's really important that we also talk about how we can grow state funding to expand enrollment capacity. One of the biggest challenges facing California today is simply that it continues to turn away students that are eligible. We don't have enough spots in college for everybody that should be going, as our economy and our workforce demands more educated workers. We need to make sure that financial support options are available, that our financial aid makes sense and meets the needs of low to moderate income college students. And I hope that in this report we've certainly made the case for why disaggregated data matters so much. You could see the huge diversity in terms of college going, preparation, and outcomes across ethnic groups. And it's important for us to know this so we can figure out how to close the gaps and how to improve and expand on that success. And Full Circle benefits from federal funding. As an NHPI serving institution, it's able to provide student support services for the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander students on their campus. So we need to ensure that those resources continue to be available. And on top of all of these recommendations, I think is a push for our state leaders and our government to acknowledge that race matters, that we should be talking about racial data and how to close these ethnic gaps, and not be afraid to have these conversations, because we know how important it is to really tackle these questions. So now we're going to take some questions from each of you. You know, we certainly hope that together we're not paralyzed by these facts. We're excited by the possibilities of change that abound. If you have a question, please type it into your chat box on the bottom left of your screen. And Stuart, before we begin to take any questions, are there any other recommendations or reactions and thoughts that you want to share with folks on this call?
Yes, thank you, Michelle. And I appreciate the presentation and again the report. There's two solutions or policy implications that I wanted to raise as we wait for more questions. One is very specifically, how do we debunk this model minority myth, and how do we raise the issue of disaggregation in a broader way? One effort in California was this bill called Assembly Bill 176. And unfortunately, the governor vetoed it. And this bill would have required the UCs, University of California's, Cal States, and the community college systems to collect data on Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander ethnic groups, including the refugee groups, including Pacific Islander and Native Hawaiian groups. We think that kind of data must be available so that we can see how people are doing. And so I know the Southeast Asia Resource Action Center and Empowering Pacific Islander Communities are leading the effort to reintroduce the bill next year. So we look forward to supporting this effort. The second solution that I think we as people concerned about this disinvestment in higher education need to really think about is how do we come together to launch a movement to reinvest in public higher education. And so some of us are involved in a campaign called Education for All. And we also, as Michelle said, we're pushing for expanded slots in the four-year colleges. We're pushing for greater financial aid, better retention programs as some of these positive best practices address, but also we are looking at how to use some of the existing formulas that the state of California is using. For example, the local control funding formula, which is implementing a state proposal that is giving more money to all of the K through 12 schools, but is giving extra money to low-income schools, foster care youth, and English language learners. And it's our concept to utilize that. It's called local control funding formula. We want to say use that same concept for those high need students so that as we expand the slots for colleges, then we have greater admissions for those qualified LCFS students so that we have greater diversity based on need and these various backgrounds so that we actually, as we expand higher education, we have greater diversity at the same time. And those local control funding formula students will be Latino, African Americans, Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, and white students who are in high need. So this is a way for us to expand, as Michelle said, higher education opportunities and at the same time bring in more diverse high need students.
Thank you, Stuart. I'm really glad you brought both of those points up. Great. So we're going to take questions. I think, Audrey, you're helping to moderate this piece as we get questions in the chat box.
I am. And do we still have Dr. Fung on the line?
Yes, I'm still here.
Great. Well, we've got a couple of questions for you. The first question is a two-part. Melissa Vang is wanting to know, what is the ethnic composition of students in the program at Sac State? And the second question is a little more general from Rosalina Mira, really asking, how can we raise awareness of Asian American community in higher ed? There are a lot of myths and misconceptions, including myths that Asian American students don't want to engage in student life. How would you respond to that?
Oh, that's great questions. I was asked, first of all, let me start off by saying that at Sacramento State, about 23% of students are Asian Pacific Islander. One of the largest populations is Hmong American. Sacramento State has the second largest Hmong American population of all the CSUs, second only to Fresno and not even that far behind. So we have a very large population of API students on our campus. I think the second question was about that engagement issue. And the questionnaire raised a good point because that's one of the things I thought about, because there's a lot of studies that show that retention and graduation rate is enhanced by engagement with the university and the community, but none of the studies focused on APIs. They were very generic and general, and so there was a question, and that again, that stereotype of that Asians want to do things on their own or not as community oriented or whatever stereotypes you want to use. And I think we've debunked that. I think the fact that we provided an opportunity for students to be engaged in something that they're interested in, and that is basically serving their communities, helping each other. In many ways, again, drawing that pan-Asian effort, not separate groupings, but working together. And we at Sacramento State have I think, really changed the culture on our campus that has really enhanced that sense of community for HPI students, and it has a very positive impact. Just hearing from our students that what they've gotten out of the Full Circle project, both in the studies that have been done already, plus even the websites, our website that has a couple of videos that feature students, is produced by students, that they really found a place that really supports them, supports their interest, and helps them support a community for them as well. And so I think that really is, and honestly, that is the crux of what Full Circle is all about. We do all the academic support, the learning communities, and everything else, but we also build a sense of community. And I think that's the value added to the Full Circle project.
Thank you so much, Professor Fung. The next question is for you, Michelle, from Karen Humphrey. Who will create a new state plan for higher education in California? The governor does not seem to support a coordinating agency nor a database to inform that plan. So who would do this work, and how can it successfully be done without the support of the current governor?
Well, Karen, I love that you ask very easy questions. I think it's very clear that we need the governor and our policymakers to understand the importance of having a plan and an agenda for higher education. We are one of only 2 states in the nation that don't have a coordinating body that can put forward priorities for higher education based on workforce needs, based on meeting the public and families and students' needs. So I think it's pretty clear that we certainly need a coordinated agenda, and we will need a governor that helps to move this forward. I think Governor Brown has very much in the last several budgets for higher education made it very clear that the importance on improving completion rates, improving transfer, improving time to degree matter. So I think we're getting to a place where certainly the priorities that we think are most critical for higher education are being pushed by the governor through the budget. I think more needs to be done, and I do think that what is missing and continues to be missing is a real intentionality around closing the equity gaps that continue to persist for students of color, given how diverse California is, given the coming retirement of baby boomers who make up some of the most well-educated of our residents, given the huge increased wage premium of college grads. I think we're going to be in a place where it makes it very clear that an agenda for higher education is necessary, not because we all want a plan, but because we need a vision for higher education that ensures that more of our young people get the education they deserve.
Can I add a point to your answer, Michelle?
Absolutely, Stuart.
I think for those of us who, I think the campaign for college opportunities has been in this area of work for quite a while. But to be honest, they're one of the few groups who really understand our minority communities, which is now the majority of our communities. But they're one of the few groups who has that community perspective that is really involved in this from statewide. And the 2 policy efforts that I suggested are examples where we really need to get many more people from our communities involved in these efforts, because we can lay out a framework, but unless we have a movement that pushes the governor, pushes the legislature, pushes the powers that be, we won't get these changes that we desperately need. It's not going to be easy to transform our system that is going to be short on 1.1 million educated people in the workforce. It's not going to be easy when the system is not focused on transforming that dilemma. So we really need people to join together to make this change.
May I add something? This is Tim Fong. may I add a little something to what Stuart said?
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Okay. I totally agree with Stuart in terms of the policy initiatives in California. They're so important to reach out to students of color throughout California. I want to highlight the fact that both Full Circle Project and the De Anza Project, they are funded by federal funding and NHPI grants, but those are soft money, and basically in California, most campuses in the CSU are both Asian serving institutions and Hispanic serving institutions, and federal funding does not allow, or is very limited in terms of providing funds for both entities. And so funding is an issue long-term and consistent. And I think the things that Stuart mentioned is so key and critical, because federal funding it only can go for a limited amount of time.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Missy Tagaloa. She asks, one of the promises of a good education is a good income and a fulfilling career. This has not been true with some of our recent graduates saddled with student loans. And it's also a point of frustration with our Asians with advanced degrees, but who have not been able to break the corporate boardroom ceiling. Her question is education still a good investment?
Well, I'll take a stab at that. This is Michelle again. I think it's clear that both national and certainly research in California have highlighted that over the long term, college graduates, their lifetime earnings is over 1.3 million more than their peers without a college education. And that's true for all ethnic groups across the state of California. We also know that the unemployment rate for those with a college degree is significantly lower. Even at the height of the recession, the number of unemployed college grads was incredibly low compared to that of their peers with only a high school diploma or less. And what we saw in the recovery is that the jobs that were being created were overwhelmingly 2/3 of new jobs as the nation's economy was recovering were for folks that had some post-secondary education. So I think all of us may know someone that's a recent college grad that doesn't have a job yet. I think all the research indicates that in the end it is absolutely a good investment. The wage premium nationwide and in California continues to grow, whereas before, the earnings of a high school grad compared to that of college grad were not as wide. They're incredibly wide today. So I would say absolutely yes.
Wonderful. We have another question from David Valladolid, who's with the Parent Institute for Quality Education, who first of all wants to thank you for the webinar and asks then two questions. How do we promote the effective programs at Sac State and De Anza College to all 2- and 4-year colleges? And the second question is, how do we succeed in making higher education available to all students at no cost?
This is Tim Fong. Thank you for the question. Certainly the Campaign for College Opportunity has been huge in terms of letting others know about what's going on at Sacramento State and also De Anza. Webinars like this and hopefully other activities. I believe there's going to be a debriefing at the state capitol tomorrow and other events hopefully will be forthcoming to let other institutions know and policymakers know about the issues of APIs in higher education, but also not just some of the concerns, but some of the best practices that are out there. They do exist. And certainly I know my colleagues over at De Anza and myself and others will be happy to share our best practices. It's not a secret. It's not intended to be a secret. It's intended to help reach out to other institutions, because the goal is to help all students achieve in higher education.
Thank you, Professor. I think with that question, and we know that there are several more that are unanswered, but we will try and actually get a response back to each of you that have taken time out of your busy days to join us for this report. We hope you know that all of the materials are available on our website at www.collegecampaign.org. A recording of this webinar will also be posted on our website. You will be able to share it with others that couldn't join that you think need to know the information we presented here. I really want to thank Professor Fong for joining us today to talk about his work, but more importantly to thank him for his commitment to students and to closing the gaps that exist at Sacramento State University. And again, I really want to thank Stuart Kuo. You're someone I respect and admire hugely, and it was a true honor to work with you in partnership on this study. And I look forward to our continued partnership as we ensure that more students in California have the opportunities that we have benefited from and that they deserve in order for our economy to be strong. So to all of you who joined us today, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude the webinar for today. We thank you for your participation and ask that you disconnect your line.